There's a moment when a man finally stops lying to himself. The rush that once felt exciting begins to fade. The laughter, the parties, the new faces, all start to blend into the same empty echo. I didn't learn this from a book or a wise teacher. I learned it by living it again and again until the illusion burned away, leaving only the bones of my own desires. Lust isn't what most men think it is. It's not passion, and it's not really about women at all. Lust is a mirror, a cruel one, that shows a man how lost he's become inside himself. When I was young, I thought lust was a kind of energy, something powerful, wild, proof that I was alive. But it wasn't life. It was hunger pretending to be love. I became addicted to the chase, to the thrill of being desired, to the temporary illusion that I mattered because someone wanted me. Every smile, every glance, every conversation with a beautiful woman was like a small electric jolt. And I mistook that electricity for connection. What I didn't know was that lust was rewiring me, quietly. Like a slow corrosion of the soul, it was teaching me to see people not as humans, but as puzzles to solve, mountains to climb, trophies to collect. You can't see this sickness from the outside. In fact, the world praises it. It calls it confidence, masculinity, success. But there's a moment, always, when the applause fades and the silence creeps in. You wake up beside someone who adores you, and you feel nothing. Not disgust, not joy, just emptiness wearing the mask of satisfaction. That's when you realize lust is not about pleasure. It's about escape. Escape from the quiet, from the pain, from yourself. There was a time when I thought I was winning at life. Beautiful women, attention, the envy of other men. It looked like success. But inside, I was starving. Each conquest left me emptier than the one before. I could charm anyone, make them laugh, make them trust me, make them fall. But I couldn't make myself feel. I had mistaken desire for love so many times that I no longer knew the difference. It's strange how lust reshapes your vision. You stop noticing people. You start noticing potential. Every woman becomes a question. Will she say yes? How long will it take? What will she give that the last one didn't? You forget her voice, her story, her dreams. You remember her curves, her lips, her smell. You begin to live in fragments, collecting moments of stimulation while your ability to connect dies quietly in the background. Lust makes you blind. But worse than that, it convinces you you're seeing clearly. There was one woman I still remember. She was the kind of woman that other men would pray for. Smart, gentle, full of grace. She loved deeply, quietly, without games. But to me, she was just another mirror for my ego. I performed affection, I said the right things, but inside there was nothing but restlessness. I wanted her, but not her soul. Just the part of her that could make me forget myself for a little while. Lust doesn't want people, it wants anesthesia. I began to notice that every man trapped in this cycle walks the same path. It starts with excitement, then turns into boredom, then guilt, then searching again for the next hit. It's not love they're chasing, it's relief. Lust promises fulfillment, but always ends in hunger. It gives a man the illusion of control, but it's the one pulling the strings. It whispers that you're choosing, but really you're obeying. There's something terrifying that happens when you finally step away from it, when you decide to stop feeding the beast. The silence it leaves behind is unbearable at first. It's like detoxing from your own mind. You don't realize how much your thoughts have been hijacked until you try to take them back. The fantasies, the scrolling, the daydreaming, they've been your comfort, your escape. And when they're gone, you're left with raw awareness, and it's almost too much. But then something beautiful happens. Slowly the fog begins to clear. The world starts to look different, softer. You start to see women as people again, complicated, flawed, radiant human beings, not moving targets. You start to hear laughter again, to notice kindness, to appreciate depth. It feels like waking up after a long fever. You begin to remember that connection isn't supposed to feel like conquest. It's supposed to feel like calm. When you stop feeding lust, you start to realize how much of your life was built around it. The clothes, the car, the gym routine, even the jokes and the ambitions, they were all part of the performance. All of it designed to attract, to impress, to feed the endless cycle of wanting and being wanted. Without it, you have to face the terrifying question, who am I if I'm not performing for attention? That's where real growth begins. You start to build yourself from the inside instead of decorating the outside. You start to understand that strength isn't about how many people you can attract. It's about how few things can control you. Lust makes you believe you're powerful when you're actually enslaved. Abstinence reveals your weakness, but through that revelation, you start to find real power. The first weeks of abstinence are brutal. You feel restless, irritable, lost. Your brain screams for the familiar fix. It tells you you're missing out, that you'll go insane, that you're denying your nature. But it's lying. What you're denying isn't your nature, it's your addiction. The human spirit isn't designed to live chained to constant craving. Once you get through the storm, you discover a strange peace on the other side, a kind of clarity you forgot existed. I've watched men go through this transformation, and it's almost spiritual. They start standing differently, speaking differently. The neediness in their eyes disappears. Women sense it immediately. They can feel when a man isn't starving for attention. He stops radiating desperation, and suddenly he becomes magnetic in a different way. Not because he's hunting, but because he's centered, because he's whole. The irony is that lust convinces you it will make you attractive, but what truly draws people in is presence. A man who's not consumed by desire gives off a rare kind of calm, a sense that he doesn't need to take anything from anyone, and that's what makes others trust him. Lust feeds on taking. Love begins with giving. When you live in lust, you drain your energy on shallow pursuits. But when you begin to master it, that same energy becomes creative. You start building instead of chasing. You start investing instead of spending. One older man told me something I'll never forget. Your sexual energy is like money. You can spend it fast, or you can invest it in something that grows. That metaphor stayed with me because I saw it in every aspect of my life. Every lustful indulgence left me poorer, in focus, in purpose, in peace. Every moment of restraint made me richer, though it didn't feel that way at first. It's strange how abstinence doesn't just change your desires, it changes your vision of reality. You begin to notice beauty everywhere, not just in flesh. The way sunlight hits a window, the laughter of children, the quiet strength in ordinary moments. When lust no longer owns you, beauty stops being something you consume and becomes something you experience. What most men don't realize is that lust kills their ability to love. Love requires patience, attention, sacrifice. Lust demands immediacy, gratification, control. You can't serve both. One will always destroy the other. And for years I let lust win. I thought I was alive, but I was just functioning on autopilot, chasing hits of validation while my soul grew numb. The day I finally understood this wasn't through a sermon or a book. It was when I sat beside a woman I once claimed to love, and she cried about her childhood, and I couldn't feel a thing. I nodded. I comforted her. But inside, I was thinking about sex. That's when I saw what I had become, a creature of appetite, incapable of empathy. And that moment broke me in a way nothing else could. Because I realized I hadn't just lost the ability to love others, I had lost the ability to be human. That was the beginning of my recovery. Not because I became pure overnight, but because I finally stopped lying to myself. Abstinence real abstinence isn't about repression. It's about remembering that you were not born to be ruled by your biology, that there is something higher, something quieter inside you, waiting to be heard once the noise dies down. When you stop feeding lust, you start to see how much it cost you, not just in relationships, but in everything. The wasted time, the broken trust, the opportunities missed because you were chasing momentary thrill instead of lasting peace. You start to understand that lust isn't just a moral issue, it's an energetic one. It drains your life force, your focus, your purpose. It's like pouring your essence into a bottomless pit that never fills. And when you finally begin to conserve that energy, something astonishing happens. Your creativity returns, your ambition becomes clearer. You start feeling powerful not because others desire you, but because you no longer need them to. It's the difference between being fed and being free. There's a stillness that arrives after the storm of lust subsides, a silence so profound it almost feels foreign. For the first time in years, you can hear your own thoughts without them being drowned by the background hum of desire. It feels uncomfortable at first, like standing in an empty room that once held a crowd. But slowly, that emptiness begins to feel like peace. You start realizing that your whole life had been lived in noise, an endless loop of seeking, chasing, consuming. And now, without that noise, you can finally think. The clarity that comes after abstinence is like waking from a long, feverish dream. Everything becomes sharper. You notice how much of your past behavior wasn't driven by free will at all, but by compulsion. Every decision, from what clothes you bought to how you spoke in public, was subtly influenced by the question, will this make me more desirable? And once that question loses its grip, you begin to see how little of your life actually belonged to you. It's a painful realization at first, because you begin to understand that lust had not just distorted your view of women, it had distorted your entire relationship with yourself. You weren't chasing pleasure. You were running from emptiness. You weren't seeking love, you were seeking distraction. The truth is, lust doesn't want satisfaction. It wants continuation. It thrives on incompleteness, on the itch that never heals. And that's why it never ends, no matter how much you feed it. Once you stop feeding it, though, your soul begins to remember what real hunger feels like. The kind that no body can satisfy. It's the hunger for meaning, for creation, for truth. That's when energy starts returning to you. Energy you didn't even know you had been losing. You wake up earlier. You think more clearly. You begin to feel emotions again, not just cravings. It's like someone replaced static with music. But here's the paradox. Abstinence isn't about avoiding women. It's about finally seeing them clearly. When lust no longer fogs your vision, women stop being temptations or trophies. They become teachers. Every conversation becomes a mirror, showing you who you are. You start noticing qualities that lust always made you overlook. Kindness, honesty, depth. You see how beauty shines differently when it's connected to character. It's not that you stop feeling desire. It's that your desire evolves. It becomes quieter, more reverent, almost sacred. You begin to understand that true attraction isn't about possession. It's about recognition. The kind of recognition that feels like your soul nodding quietly at another soul. And that kind of connection can only be felt by a man who has freed himself from addiction. Because only a free man can truly choose. As I walked this path, I realized that most men are not free. They think they are, because they can sleep with whoever they want, whenever they want. But freedom without control is just chaos disguised as liberty. Real freedom is the ability to say no when every cell in your body wants to say yes. It's choosing direction over impulse. It's understanding that every act of self-restraint builds something invisible inside you, a foundation of strength that others can feel, even if they can't explain it. I met men who practiced this discipline deeply, and they radiated something I couldn't describe at first. It wasn't arrogance or moral superiority, it was presence. When they spoke, you listened. When they looked at someone, that person felt seen, not evaluated. Their calmness wasn't forced, it came from knowing they weren't at war with themselves anymore. That's what abstinence does. It ends the civil war within, but the danger never truly disappears. Lust waits quietly, patient, cunning. It knows the right moment to whisper again when you're lonely, tired, stressed. It tells you that one small indulgence won't hurt, that you've earned it. And that's how it pulls you back in. The key isn't to destroy lust, it's to tame it, to keep it on a leash instead of letting it run the house. There were times I fell back, hard, weeks of discipline erased in a single night of weakness. And each time, the aftermath felt like mourning, because every relapse reminded me of how easy it was to lose myself again. But I learned not to make that failure my identity. Failure is not who you are, it's where you paused. You stand up, you start again. That's the real practice. The truth is, abstinence is not an end. It's a doorway. It leads you into yourself, into the parts of you that you've neglected for years. The creativity you left behind, the curiosity, the gentleness, all of it begins to resurface. You realize how much potential had been buried under layers of desire. And that's when life starts expanding. You begin to create instead of consume. You start learning, growing, giving. You start becoming someone capable of love. Not the movie kind, not the chemical rush, but the steady kind that builds instead of burns. The strangest part is how your relationships with women begin to change without effort. When you stop needing them to validate you, they begin to feel safe around you. They can sense that your gaze doesn't strip them down. They relax. They open up. They show you who they really are. And that's when genuine connection becomes possible, because you're no longer taking, you're witnessing.